That Tron Aries trailer has left everybody speechless. This proves that those Disney plans that they were talking about months ago are real. The fact that they're releasing this trailer a week before Comic-Con proves it even more. We don't know what's coming out next week, but we got a lot to go over in this video. We got to discuss the beginning of this trailer, which has the red Disney castle, because it's literally what we got in Legacy. Now, just because there's a lot of red in this movie doesn't mean we aren't getting blue. I got to emphasize this because there's a lot of it in this trailer, and what best represents that is this grid city right here. You can see it's all blue. If you look very closely, there are blue recognizers, which we have not seen since the 1982 movie, which is so cool. And these on the bottom could be light tanks. They might not be. They just kind of look like it. If you look really far in the back, you got this like city or building. It kind of looks like Tron City, End of Line Club. I'm just kind of reaching there. And another big reach is this stream over here in the back. It could just be more light lines, but it does kind of look like a stream, maybe to this grid's version of the Sea of Simulation. And obviously you have these three different beams. Now if you saw this footage on its own, you would think that's just a solar sailor beam, but it definitely isn't, because if you go back a few seconds earlier, you will see we are potentially at Encom. You can see we go through the light and it looks a lot like the Legacy portal. So I don't think this is a portal even though it looks like it, but instead I think these are IO towers. We got like 3 or 4 of them. It's programs communicating with users. Obviously the elephant in the room here is the sky is daylight, which has never happened on the grid. As a main reason, we didn't really have one, but thanks to this Twitter user right here, I think we've cracked the code. It is due to Korra wanting to see the sun for the first time. So when Sam was making this updated Encom grid, he decided to give this grid daylight, maybe sometimes or all the time, but either way, it does explain a lot here. And I want to go over an image I went over in my previous video, and it has to do with Aries, Athena, and a third program breaking into this type of barrier. And it looked like they were in the Outlands, maybe near a portal to escape, but now seeing this barrier around the very tip top of this city proves they are breaking into this city or this grid, which does make me believe that this could be the Encom grid. It does give validity to that theory, but then there's also this scene of all the blue programs, which by the way, they look amazing. It looks just like Legacy when you compare the two right here. Their circuitry in the middle looks just like the Sentry Guard's circuitry, which makes me believe they could all be on the same grid. But then you also have the Dillinger grid where it's all red at the same time with dark skies. So then it makes you think, okay, so we're gonna have the new Encom grid, the Dillinger Systems grid, the 82 grid, potentially the old Legacy grid and Arc grid. So we are gonna have, like, as I said last time, a full multiverse Crisis on Infinite Grids type of situation. And I gotta continue on with that a little bit later regarding the 82 grid because there's a lot to say regarding that. But before we do, I want to focus specifically on Aries and his whole role in this movie. When you first watch the trailer, you actually hear Julian Dillinger, and he's actually saying the exact same thing as he said in the leaked trailer about intelligent life coming to us, we're not going to them. And with this whole demonstration with the shades that we went over, all of that, I was right, we all were right. They are quite literally materializing programs. They're bringing in the Dart, they're bringing in Aries, Athena, and other programs. And what's interesting is you can see the military. Dillinger's trying to get a government contract. He wants to help them with soldiers. He explains that he can just make a new Aries within seconds. And when you look inside Aries' helmet, his screen, kind of like Iron Man, it gives him all the information on the individual standing in front of him, and it says de-resolution in, and it says like less than 30 minutes, and it's counting down. So this proves that it's either 1, him having to derez his opponents, or 2, that he himself will be derezed. And I think that it's probably the second option. It's way more likely. But then seconds later, we actually see Dillinger snap his fingers, and we see Aries derez into ashes basically, and there's kind of like a slight fire effect if you look at it carefully. And I was concerned last time when we saw the trailer because we saw Athena, she also turned to ashes. But in this trailer, with the blue programs that we just went over, they are actually hit with discs from Dillinger's army, and they turn into glass-like cubes just like in Legacy, which is great. I'm glad that they kept this. So this is the grid version of getting derezed, and this is the real world version of getting derezed. And everything that we've seen thus far explains quite a bit, because we got this red laser materializing everything. We've got this countdown. Dillinger is in complete control. So when they're generated into the world, they're not permanent. These bodies they have are not permanent. They can be destroyed easily. Whereas with Korra, it's with the regular old Shiva laser. Flynn probably knew that he could not go back into the real world, and that only 2 people could go back back. So he decided to trade his life for Cora and Sam, and Cora kind of took Flynn's place. So she's permanently on Earth wearing clothes and everything. And with Aries and everybody else, since the process was different, Aries' mission in this movie is to find the Permanence code along with Eve Kim, and they work together. This Permanence code is going to be able to allow him to live fully as a human being. In this scene of Aries on the light skimmer with Athena, you can actually see Athena's disc, and it is white with blue lines, and this is very different from everybody else's in any Tron media. So it makes me think that maybe they are escaping with the Permanence code that Dillinger was about to get, or it's a key to the Permanence code. But there's definitely something special about her disc right here. You can also see there are these light drones, and they're on the water, but we've also seen them in the air inside Dillinger's grid as well as Center City. So they obviously aren't limited to water. The only water vehicle is the one that Aries is on. And just to kind of return to Julian real quick, I don't think that him snapping in the trailer quite literally Derez's Aries. I do think that monitoring room in the back, I think they probably are like hitting a switch to Derez or something. In the previous trailer, we know that Dillinger looks concerned. I think in this trailer we see earlier on where he hasn't really gotten to that point yet. He's probably still wanting to get the Dillinger name out there, prove they're better than NCOM, and we see Elizabeth Dillinger telling him that he thinks he has everything under control when he doesn't. It proves the speculation we had with the photo a week ago. The photo practically speaks for itself without us even having to watch the scene. It seems the mother isn't as on board. Maybe she is in the beginning and then not so much later on. Either way, he obviously doesn't listen to her, and I think what's going to happen is we're going to see Dillinger Sr. is uploaded to the computer and he's talking to his son, as we saw in Tron the Next Day. That was with Junior, not Julian, so that's a little different, but still, regardless of this, we will probably see this happen, which will also maybe put on the pressure. And even if that doesn't happen, I still think Dillinger Sr. does have a role to play here. So I kind of look at it as Dillinger Sr. is kind of like the devil on his shoulder, and his mother's kind of like the angel on his shoulder. After a while, we know that Aries does shift sides. Athena eventually becomes the main villain of this movie besides Dillinger. You can tell right here, Aries looks very annoyed when the guard comes up to him. They've been through this like hundreds of times. They're tired of being Derezed, then materialized, then Derezed again. And I think he's just like, I've had enough of this. You can see this upside down shot that we've seen like multiple times at this point. It's just a reflection of him in the recognizer on the grid, and he's actually looking at videos and photos of human interactions. Now, some speculated this was Sam as a kid, and at first I thought that, but then I thought, well, wait, this could actually be Eve Kim as well as a kid. Maybe it's her memories. And then I realized it's just going way too quick. You really can't make out who it is. So I think it's just experiencing humanity in general, and Aries is building this sort of curiosity around it. Now, at this point, he isn't a recognizer. It looks like he's on the grid, but at the beginning of the trailer, you can actually see the recognizer going towards Center City, and he's piloting it because you can see the disc of his on the back. This is probably where that missile shot comes from. He's still involved with all these horrible things, and I don't think that we actually see much of the climax in any of these trailers. I think a lot of this is early on, and that's why Julian and his mother are looking out in horror, because you can see the recognizer slowly inching through the city. It's going further than they had intended it for it to go, and with this invasion happening, I had speculated that the Tron City was quite literally entering our world, and that's not necessarily out of the question, but it's not as likely since we know this new grid just straight up has daylight now. But since it seemed like there was concept art from years ago for Tron Ascension of a grid city in the real world, I'm not going to shut down the idea completely. Since we were talking about the recognizer, we got to talk about the light jets, because the light jets, they are quite different this time, and they actually look really good. Now, obviously in Uprising and Legacy, it was more like they were riding it like sitting on the light jet, whereas in this version, it's more like a hang glider, but I also think of an X-Wing starfighter, and it's quite similar to the Tron Catalyst light jets that we saw, which is interesting since Bithell Games did explain last year that they know what comes forward in the timeline, so I wouldn't be surprised if both teams at Disney did work together to create these very minor connections between the Arc grid and the Dillinger grid. And it's kind of the same thing with the light cycles, because with those, they're basically the same. They got the engine in the center that looks a little different, glows like a light bulb, and then you obviously have the back of the wheel, the rear wheel kind of turn at this shot right here. So these light cycles are a lot less stiff, they're more flexible, but it's more of a minor detail. And then I want to talk about discs again. Aries has the triangle disc, and he is the only one that has the triangle disc. Everyone else has circular discs, and Flynn has a different disc, but we'll get into that in just a moment. But with the blue programs, their discs look nearly identical to the legacy ones. There is a bit more of a pattern, so it's a slight difference, and that would make sense. you don't want it to look the exact same. Athena essentially whacking this blue disc coming at her with her staff with ease. It was so epic. And the flip here that Ares gave is also giving Rinsler vibes. Tron Parallels on Twitter made this comparison. And we were talking about discs, and that means we got to talk about Flynn's disc. This is a 82 pattern disc. The outline does look very much like Legacy, but at the same time, it's hard to not think of this as kind of like an arc reactor from Iron Man, which makes me think this might not even be a disc, and it could just be a tool that maybe Ares will need in the movie or Flynn will use. And I honestly think at this point what's happening here when Ares and Flynn are talking, or a version of Flynn, because I think Clue and Flynn have merged. I still think that. I'm sure most of you guys think that. It's basically Ares master control of Dillinger systems and Flynn master control of the old Encom system, having a conversation about what it means to be human as a malfunctioning program. One thing I want to critique, and it depends on how this movie does, it has to do with Flynn questioning Ares' desire to live. He could just be curious and that's the end of it, but the fact is he lived with Cora for 20 years, essentially thousands of years in grid time. He would definitely know programs like her would want to live normally or at least experience it. So I'm hoping that this is just him being curious and this isn't him being oblivious. This could be a continuity error character-wise, but the dialogue in certain moments does have me concerned that they're gonna mischaracterize him, but we'll have to wait and see. I do think after Sam took over Encom, he did probably update the old 82 system slightly, and he was able to use his microchip necklace to upload his father into that system, and I think that Ares was able to power that system back on in order to talk to Flynn. And I think this just because in Tron 2.0, obviously the old Encom system N1282 had been shut down for many years until Jet Bradley had powered it up looking for the Tower Guardian I know. He was looking for the Tron Legacy code. That's obviously a non-canon game, but I think there's similarities here and it could explain why we're returning to such an old, outdated system. I do think that they're trying to imply that Flynn is some sort of force ghost since he is a hologram. You can see he's not a full-blown program. He's just unkillable. He's immortal for the rest of his days. I just hope that he either gets a nice send-off in this movie or he's able to come back in a way that doesn't feel too fan service, because I know many people have had problems with fan service regarding this movie. Where Flynn is located in this grid, it looks like it could have been a recognizer or a light tank, and I still agree with this. I think it's more likely a light tank, and I think the reason it looks so different yet similar is because it is a light tank, but because of perspective, they can show the scale of just how big a light tank is compared to where Ares is standing. And another possibility is that Flynn is at the new IO tower on the old 82 grid, or he's straight up where the master control program was in the 82 movie. And one last thing regarding this grid, we know definitively that this is the Encom grid because look at the colors on Ares inside this grid. It looks muted and purple, very similar to how the colors looked in the actual original movie. And I like the continuity with colors here. It's just awesome to see. And then this is one of the last major scenes. We see Ares breaking through the glass at Flynn's arcade and his lights are flickering. Now I originally had the theory that Eve Kim would give him her user power to essentially charge him up like what Flynn would do with Yori, but I'm not so sure at this time. It could just be reflective of his emotional state. It could be exclusive to Ares, or it could be that all programs are doing this. But speaking of Flynn's arcade, I have to mention that in the previous video, I went over all these different photos at the arcade and other locations, and we went over other details regarding the movie. So at the end of this video, you definitely should check that video out. And then two non-trailer things we got to go over is this amazing poster. They are honestly nailing the posters here. They might even beat out Tron Legacy's posters by the end of this promotional run, because this one, they're literally using the wheel of the light cycle to form the O in Tron. This is wallpaper material. I've even seen edits of this as a wallpaper. It's just amazing. And then 9 Inch Nails. They released a brand new single for the new Tron Ares soundtrack. It sounds really good. I love it. Fantastic. This was also to promote that the OST is available for pre-order and it's going to be fully available to download on September 19th. We actually got all the names for the songs that are coming, and one that stuck out, funny enough, was Ghost in the Machine. Now, if any of you fans know that story, you know that, well, some interesting things happen in there, and I'll just leave it at that. But anyways, if you want to check out that video going over other Tron details, you're going to want to check these videos out right here.